Hi everyone. In this bite-sized bit, we're going to be discussing how to create a C# program with multiple forms. Let's go ahead and get started. For today's exercise, we're going to design a program that collects customer information and allows you to set their specific payment information. I'm going to demonstrate the completed program and then we'll go ahead and create it together. The first form that will show up when this program runs is the customer form, and we've loaded this form with a couple of made-up customer names, Mike Smith and Nancy Jones. If I choose Mike Smith, I can then click on the Select Payment button to enter their payment information. And when I do so, the program will open a second subform to fill in this information. You can see that for payment information, I can either enter credit card information or I can bill to customer. If I choose credit card, I can choose Visa or MasterCard or American Express or Discover. I can enter a card. I can choose a month of the year, and I can choose a year. I can even check this box that sets as the default billing method. Once I've entered payment information, I can click OK. And my first form will return, and you'll see a summary of the information that I've actually entered. I can save this information, and if I forget to save this information, I'll get a prompt that says, are you sure you want to exit before saving your work, with the appropriate yes, no, cancel. So there's a lot going on in this particular solution. Let's go ahead and start creating it for ourselves. I'm going to create a brand new project in Visual Studio. The template I'm going to use is our Windows Form app for the .NET framework, and I will name it my last name, my first name, and then something descriptive, in this case, customer payment, because we'll be collecting payment information about our customers. For our first form, I'm going to go ahead and name this one the FRM customer form. I'm going to go ahead and choose yes for renaming all of the project references. I'm going to highlight my form object. And in properties, I'm going to change the text to customer. The second thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create a second form. And this is the first time we've ever created a second form in this class. The easiest way to do so is to go to the project menu up top and choose the Add Windows Form at the top of this menu choice. You'll get a list of various objects that you can create, but the Windows form is already highlighted. The default name is form1.cs. I'm going to type over that and call this FRM payment. Because we're creating this form from scratch, we don't get that second choice of changing the code base behind the scenes. It's already going to be named properly based upon FRM payment. But we do want to change the text in the upper left-hand corner of our form, so I'm going to go ahead and change that property to say payment. There are some interesting things that happen when you start to write a program that has multiple forms. And one of the things that we have not visited so far this semester is what's happening inside program.cs. Let's go ahead and take a look at it now. If you single click on program.cs, it will open up on your screen. And there is one particular line of code that is relevant to us. And that is the very last line of code in this main method, which says application.run new FRM customer. This is the first form that will run when you start up your program. And you can choose any of the forms that you've created to be your startup form. In this case, FRM customer makes perfect sense. But if you wanted the first form to show up to be a form that you just created, like your payment form, you can change that line of code, and that will be the first form that shows up. Let's demonstrate. If I click Start, my payment form shows up on my screen. I'm going to change this back to FRM Customer because that's going to be the first form that I want to show up in my program, but this is the location where you would change the default first form. The next thing I'm going to do is design my visual interface for both of my forms. I'm going to go ahead and do that off video, and then I'll come back and we'll talk about what's going on in each of the forms. All right, let's start with a discussion of our customer form. I've added a couple of labels and a couple of different controls. Let's talk through each of them. The first control, which has the label customer name next to it, is called CBO customer name. And this is going to contain names of our customers in a drop-down control. We'll program the contents of that control in a little bit. The second object, which has the label payment method, is actually another label. Now, normally in this class, labels have been static, which means we don't give them unique names because they never change. But in this particular case, this label is going to receive different information depending on how we're manipulating our forms. And so I'm going to give it the name LBL payment. I've also changed some things about this label. Specifically, I have changed its border style to fixed 3D, so it looks like it's sunken into the screen. And because it is empty, I've had to change its auto size from true to false so that I could actually drag this out to a rectangle with the appropriate shape that I want. Normally labels are exactly the right size and shape for the text inside of them, but in this case I wanted something a little bit different. So this label got some different features than what we've typically seen. I've also added 3 buttons to this form: a select payment button called BTN Select Payment, a save button called BTN Save, and an exit button called BTN Exit. Before we start programming for the customer form, let's take a look at the payment form. This form has a little bit more going on. The first thing that I've done is I've created what we call group boxes. Group boxes are in the toolbox, but they're not in the common controls. They're in the second choice, which is containers. Group boxes allow us to organize our controls on our form for visual purposes, and also allow us to manipulate multiple controls at the same time. And I'm going to show you a clever way of doing so when we start programming for the payment form. I've created 2 different group boxes, one for billing and one for credit card. You can see this first group box is called GRP Billing, and the second group box is called GRP Credit Card. If I grab and drag a group box around, everything that's inside of it moves along with it. So like I said, much easier to manipulate multiple controls when you're using group boxes. The second set of controls that I've added inside the billing group box are some radio buttons. Radio buttons are in our toolbox, and I've named the first one RDO Credit Card and the second one RDO Bill to Customer. I've also set the default true or false value for the credit card radio button to true. So in this case, when this form starts, credit card will be chosen by default. In our credit card group box, I've created a list called credit card type. And in this case, it's going to contain the various credit cards that the user can choose. I've created a text box for our credit card number, and it's a very straightforward text box called TXT credit card number. And I've created 2 combo boxes for our expiration date, CBO month, and CBO year. Finally, I've added a checkbox outside of the group boxes. I named it CHK default. Checkboxes are options the user can choose or not choose. Be careful when you're designing your programs to choose the appropriate controls. Radio buttons mean that you can choose one of many options. Checkboxes mean that you can choose 0, 1, or many of many options. Sometimes that's what you want. For instance, choosing the toppings on a pizza, you might choose no toppings, or 1 topping, or 4 toppings, or 12 toppings. But in some cases, you want to only be able to choose one of many options. So be careful that you're choosing the appropriate control on your form to achieve the goal you're trying to accomplish. That's it for part 1 of creating our multi-form design. In part 2, we'll go ahead and start programming each of these forms to get them to talk to each other. Thanks for watching. See you next time.